So in this next section, okay, so what we're going to do here for this next section, I'm going to actually duplicate this. And you could get the same effect that I'm about to explain by automating octaves here, but I kind of just want to have two instances of this so I can, it makes it a little easier for me to look at again. So I'm a very simple man. I do things in a very simple way. So I'm going to copy this over here and simply just go into Anna 2, the second instance of it here, and then go to that second oscillator once this loads up and push this up one more octave. Because then this way the timbre from oscillator 2 will affect oscillator 1, making it sound higher pitch than it was before. So it'll sound like this. So we can kind of get this more tension building, showing that we're going somewhere with this song. Then maybe we could even switch back. And I mean, you can alternate these around depending on the feel of where the vocals are. Everything kind of affects everything when it comes to music production. So, and that's at least my opinion. So I think that depending on the feel that you're trying to get out of the song, that's where you can place whatever you're trying to place. So in this case, I'm going to also duplicate this to that B section again. But actually this time, what I want to do, just because in my mind, it's almost like this B section, well, not B section, but verse 2, I'll call it, the post-drop section. It's kind of coming down so it can build back up. So what I'm going to do is have the higher ones, because in my opinion, higher pitched sounds imply higher tension in a lot of ways, depending on how you use them. So in this case, I'm going to copy the lower one to that second build up after that verse. And then in the end, I'm just going to have the low ones. Yeah, so kind of feel this out. It's like after the mass drop here, it'll go into this this section. Just a comfortable transitional effect. Yeah, basically this synth sounds pretty much a transitional effect in a way, but not really between sections, more so between bars. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create almost like a bell texture that is flossed underneath the entirety of the song. And it sort of ties everything together and creates this underlying tension and interesting organic factor to things. And luckily, Anna 2 actually has a lot of really cool organic like bell sounds and these really cool just sampler sounds within their sampler, just preset with everything. So it's really great to pull from a lot of times when you want inspiration and you want to kind of start, building a track from scratch and creating a vibe right away without, having to create something from scratch. Because I feel like a big stigma around a lot of electronic music, which there's nothing wrong with, I fully respect, which is, creating sounds from scratch. And I'm all for that. I respect that. It's amazing. But I'm really inspired personally by kind of starting with samples in certain ways, because I feel like that's kind of what fuels a lot of inspiration for writing, especially this genre of music of trap. So one patch I particularly really liked was Chimes 1, which is in this single library within the sampler. So let's see here, Chimes 1. So let's take a little listen here. Well, we have to turn off this oscillator first. Yeah, it sounds really, really dope. So secondly, what I'm going to do is close this here, and I'm going to go to the filter just to add almost more presence to this. And I'm going to use let's see what kind of filters we have here. For this one, I really like, I either try, it's the vintage, I like the 4-pole vintage actually, so I think I'm just going to try that. So with this, I'm going to bring up the drive, bit of the resonance. Almost like lo-fi out the sound a little bit and give it a bit more dynamic in the stereo field here. So next I'm going to draw in like this little looping pattern using just this root note F. And something I actually really like doing with samplers is they always kind of loop the sound. So I like to kind of adjust that loop end and just like mess with it to the point where it can just keep doing this interesting, almost like restart glitching effect here. Redo this. So start at like, gotta get this right here. That sounds pretty good. So I feel like basically what we can do here is just duplicate this. Let's hear how this sounds with the metronome. So I'm going to actually go in and adjust this a little bit more. Get one of these curves going on here. Pull this guy down here a little more. Just trying to get this loop right for my own preference. Yeah, that sounds kind of cool because it has this weird sort of off time kind of feel to it, yet still pertaining to the tempo. So yeah, next what I'm going to do here is add, actually, because there's this little bit of clicking going on, it's a very light clicking happening, I'm going to add an auto filter to the beginning of this. So basically, gotta find this boy right here. Okay. So we can kind of filter this in over time. Let's see. So I'm going to start with like maybe 1,000 hertz. So give it an intro kind of feel. And then, so it might kind of feel out of time, but it creates an organic quality to it, and that's what I like about it. And when the drums and everything come back in, then you'll catch the rhythmic feel of everything, and it'll all tie together, and the side chaining and everything will let all these elements shine through in their own manner. So I locked the automation so I could duplicate that, by the way. Very handy tool for those of you who haven't messed with it. Automation locking is great for when you're trying to copy something over but not move all the automation with it. So let's kind of hear how this sounds. So this is a little too off time for my opinion, so I think what I'm going to do is go back into that sampler and readjust it a little bit, just see if we can get it. So I'm going to just make sure that this is looping correctly. Just going to add the metronome so I can hear it. It takes a little bit of finessing to do this style of sampling. See how this sounds. very particular. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm actually going to combine these two sounds by resampling. So basically, I'm going to turn this auto filter off here because I can't fully get the sound that I was originally going for. So just because of how inconsistent this style of sampling is, I'm just going to resample this first part right here. I'm making an audio track. I just froze that track, dragging this down here. That's that. And then basically, let's listen here. So I'm going to actually unfreeze this and just stop the looping. Take these guys out. Because I like that like sort of skipping intro, but then going into the standard bell sound. So the sort of feel that I want here. Yeah, so it hits directly on beat there. And then I can just refreeze this again and drag down the additional part to that and just keep looping that as is. And this is actually come in handy down the road here in a second because I was going to resample it anyway, so either or, it doesn't really matter if I nail the sound from the get-go because I'm still gonna sort of resample it. So let's hear how this new resampled version sounds. Yeah, there we go. That sounds cool. So I think basically what we need to do is just copy this auto filter down onto that. And then let's see here. Delete this automation point and then do what we were doing before. I'm going to consolidate this here. I'm going to actually delete this instance of Anna 2. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, so nextly, I'm going to filter that in again with the auto filter. So it feels kind of weird and off time, but I like that sort of feels, and that's kind of what I'm going for here. Then I'm just going to loop this throughout the track up until so it kind of adds to like a background element of the song, like an ambience essentially. So let's see here. I'm going to secondly just at this part specifically the build essentially, I'm going to consolidate all of these and pitch them down an octave and use a certain warp mode to kind of get it to sound interesting at this part and add to the underlying ambience of this section. So I don't really like, for this context of thing, I don't really like using the complex pro mode, which is generally used for vocals or trying to maintain or shape formants of whatever sample you're warping. I'm going to actually use texture mode. So you can almost make it sound more dissonant. Or like more choppy in certain ways. By adjusting the grain size and the flux. So I'm just gonna keep it around, let's see. Let's just keep it at, let's try like 24. Yeah, because you kind of get the in-between of that dissonant sound and, but still pertaining to the original key of whatever the sample is. So next I'm going to kind of more so process this and adjust the volume and everything here. So first off, I'm going to add this auto, so I have the auto filter on there. First off, I'm going to add a just this EQ. It's pretty much just needs an EQ. It's not like I'd like the overall kind of tonality, and I sort of like the dynamic to the sound. So I'm just pretty much going to keep it as is. So I just kind of doing a low cut down there and shelving the mids a little bit, or belling the mids. So I'm going to copy over all this stuff. Well, I'm going to copy the first half, the pitched up version, to the first half of the verse section here, and then just copying this little thing here to the second half, so it pitches down. And then for the outro, I'm just going to go out with pretty much just these until the very end. Going to add a little bit compression to it. Take back what I said earlier. Just add this guy right here, just because it's a little bit quiet and too dynamic. That's it. Yeah, there we go. It's a little better. All right, so next step here with the synths, similarly to the rest of the stuff, I'm going to group these all together and send them to the sidechain bus, or the sidechain return track, and do some processing on the overall group. Like I said before, I mean, it's really, for me, it's really dependent on the song, whether or not I mix and master first and last. Well, not so much mastering, more so just mixing. But in this particular song, from when I started it to, finish, I pretty much was mixing as I was going. So, it is kind of a preference depending on what kind of thing I'm making. So I'm gonna first off just call this synths. So we're staying organized here. Then I'm going to add I'm just gonna add a saturator. Just on the soft sign, essentially. And let's see here. You keep the soft clip on, bring this down a little bit just so it's not fully at full max volume. So because sometimes when it comes to compressing everything and mixing and mastering, things will tend to jump out a bit too much. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring that down a little bit. Then I'm going to add an EQ. So the thing with what I did in each individual channel was I actually EQ'd most of the lows out, so I don't really need to low cut anything here, but I'm just going to bring down a little bit of the mids, so for future reference, whatever other instruments such as vocals and everything, just cut through it just a little bit more. And then, so for the beginning of the song, I almost feel like I want a bit more, just something. So it's a little bit of something. And I don't know, I personally really like kind of the vinyl static or vinyl distortion, because it almost adds this cool sort of nostalgic element to it that a lot of people I think really enjoy, and I personally enjoy. So what's really cool about Ableton Live is they have their own vinyl distortion, which is pretty clever that they added that, in my opinion, because it's who would have thunk that as a normal thing. People would just use that. But in this case, I'm going to just push up the volume a bit so we can get that going. And the only downside to vinyl distortion, it's not triggered per sample. It's just consistently going throughout the entire song. So you do have to automate on and off the volume here. And then also I'm going to just move this a little bit. Shape this a little more. Okay. And then I'm going to automate this just at the beginning. Because then it adds to almost that glitchy feel that we get from that bell synth ambience. Let's hear how this sounds. Yeah, it feels kind of cool how that comes in. One last thing, actually, outside of the processing, I want to actually resample this bell synth so I can put it during the drop, almost as a background drone, which will tie everything together more so. Because I think it's very important to allude or to reference the things from the rest of the song in this kind of music. Obviously, it's all just subjective. It's all an opinion, just like anything else in music. But personally, for this song, I think it's a good idea to just sort of have that drone to sort of drive the background. It's a very subtle element that's almost too subtle to tell, but when you really listen closely to certain songs, you can get it. And this is prominent in a lot of 2012 dubstep, even dubstep now. But I feel like it was definitely very prominent during the Complextro era of time with like all the dubstep and Complextro music and everything, to just have this backlying drone to tie together the complexity of the instruments. But and with this song, it is quite complex in a sense with all the sounds going on. So I want to kind of add that. So almost like that, or that ding dong. Yeah, that thing right there I think is good because it kind of just has this rhythmic feel to it. It's like na, 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 almost like a siren in a way, like that's just wailing in the background very subtly. That's another thing you can use. You can literally use as a drone too, is sirens, and a lot of people do that. But preferably, I like being a little bit more experimental and creative with it. So I'm gonna sort of add this drone in here during right when that kick hits right there. So it's gonna be very like. Just gonna duplicate this guy. So it sounds a little bit weird right now, but what I'm actually going to do with this is add quite a bit of reverb to it, just so I can keep that ambient feel to it. Just gonna put this up, and then. Then EQ this. And I want to definitely cut out most of the highs and most of the lows, just so it's this mid-range backing ambience. And if you want to get really fancy, you can, you can get some like fancy panning plugins like DRMS, and like that's some really nerdy stuff there. But I feel like it's definitely something if you want to play with the panning, play with the spacing of your sounds, and whether or not it's background cymbals, or you can even go to the extent of doing binaural panning, where in the stereo field you can pan things behind you in a sense. And there's some really good plugins for that. It's a pretty niche thing to do, but something I've experimented with and definitely can come in handy depending on the sound you're trying to do. But in this case, we're just going to keep it simple. We're just going to keep it pretty centered for the most part, just keeping the original stereo field of the sound itself. So let's just take a little listen to this. Definitely much more subtle. But we're going to want this to sit pretty low in correlation to everything else. So as you can tell, the drop synths there are significantly louder than what this is doing. Actually bring this up just a little bit more. So I'm just going to put this throughout the rest of the song. Pretty much pretty much sits the same in every section, just during the drops. So going to cut this out during the turnarounds here and during like where the fills are. So copy this over to the next section here. Very, very subtle, but definitely a key element tying things together. One last thing, like I said before, totally skipped on doing this. I'm going to send the synths to sidechain so they're not conflicting with the kick and the snare. It would be a very subtle conflict, but it's still just good to get rid of that and make sure that the kick and the snare can just push through everything. So that concludes the synth portion of this tutorial. Next, we're going to be talking about percussion, so stick around and watch the next video. Thanks.